Hello, wonderful grade 4s and 5s. I'm so glad that you're joining me for this science/ELA activity today. Now know that if you need more, and I would encourage you to find out more about the human body, there will be some videos posted to the science channel in Teams, some links. They're optional, but it would be awesome if you could check them out. So they're just YouTube videos. They're not made by me, so they're probably way more interesting than my videos, but I hope you can check them out, okay, in addition to this assignment. So let's switch to the camera view and we'll go through the assignment together. Okay, so for today we are going to talk about why bones are hard and muscles are soft. Now before we start, I thought I would demonstrate a little demonstration for you. So this is an elastic band. It's stretchy. I want you to think of a muscle as an elastic band. You can stretch it and you can let it go. It can stretch, it can contract. It is stretchy, okay? A muscle can stretch like a rubber band, but just like a rubber band, if I was to stretch it too far, it would break. Okay, so again, here's my rubber band or my muscle. I can stretch it and release it, stretch it and release it. But if I was to pull too hard, it could break, can snap. I also wanted to confirm. So there's two words that are important to know. There's voluntary and involuntary. So I'm just going to write them here. They don't have any vocabulary words here, but I'm going to start with voluntary. And then I'm also going to write involuntary. So these are important to understand before we get started. It's hard for me to write and talk at the same time, but I did it. So voluntary is something you can do at will. Okay, so if you want to, you're able to use your muscles. You can do voluntary movements, which are movements you think about and you choose to do. You have to think about and you do them on purpose. Okay, they're your choice. But involuntary movements are movements that you don't think about, but you do not by choice. So involuntary movements might be like your heart beats. You're not doing that. You're not choosing to make your heart beat. It just beats on its own. So these are things, actions out of your control. Okay, so just understand that before we get started, that we have these two words that are important to understand. So voluntary, think volunteer. If you're doing something, you're volunteering for something, you're saying, I'll do it, and you're doing it by choice. So voluntary is to do something on purpose or by choice, and involuntary is something that's out of your control. So maybe you're doing something and it's not something that you're purposely doing. So involuntary is an action out of your control, kind of like your heart beating. Breathing happens almost involuntarily. You can stop it and hold your breath if you really want, but not for too long, right? You need to breathe. Okay, so let's read. There are 3 types of muscle tissue that make up the muscles in your body. One type forms the muscles in your organs. Another type forms your heart muscle. The third type forms the muscles that attach to your skeleton. This skeletal muscle tissue is made up of long, thin cells that look like threads. Unlike most other cells, skeletal muscle cells have more than one nucleus. Muscle cells bundle together to form long, rope-like cords of tissue. So imagine that. You see there's these long rope-like cords of tissue and they wrap around your bones. They're pretty cool. Every time you move, muscle tissue contracts and relaxes. When you make a muscle in your arm by flexing, you're actually contracting the muscle tissue and making it shorter and thicker. When you stop flexing, the muscle tissue releases, becoming longer and thinner. Okay, so just try that a couple times. Flex your arm muscles and you'll feel them contract. So that means it's actually the opposite of stretching. So this is it, relax. When you contract, it becomes shorter. Okay. When you release, it becomes longer and thinner. Okay. So sorry, you're looking at the writing on that. It's probably distracting. So again, this is your muscle. If you contract it, it gets shorter and thicker. Okay. When you stop flexing, your muscle tissue releases and it's longer and thinner. So contract, shorter and thicker, release, thinner and longer. Okay, so it says, rewrite each sentence, changing a word or phrase to make the sentence true. So the first one is, the muscle tissue in your heart is made up of long, thin cells. Okay, the muscles, and if you look here, we'll read it up here and it'll be able to tell us. There are 3 types of tissue that make up the muscles in your body. One type forms the muscles in your organs. Another type forms your heart muscle. The third type forms muscles that attach to your skeleton. Okay, the skeletal muscle tissue is made up of long, thin cells that look like threads. The heart is not made up of long, thin cells. So the muscle tissue of your heart is not made up of long, thin cells, but the muscle tissue of your skeletal system, your skeletal muscles. So let's cross out heart and put skeleton. Okay, so let's write that out. The muscle tissue, it's a good time to practice your handwriting. The muscle tissue, you don't say muscle, but you spell it muscle, in your skeleton is made up of long, comma, thin cells. So we changed the heart to skeleton, and then it made sense. All right, the next one. Skeletal muscle cells have a nucleus and many cell membranes. Okay, so remember when we read up there, they actually have more than one. Have more than one. Nucleus and many cell membranes. And it actually doesn't have many cell membranes. It has a cell membrane. Okay, so skeletal muscle cells have more than one nucleus Sorry for the banging if you can hear it. My children are playing. And which means one, cell membrane. Remember, the cell membrane is what goes over the cell to kind of contain it, and the nucleus is what directs the cell to work. All right, next one. When you flex your arm, the muscle tissue becomes longer and thinner. Now, we did talk about that. I'm going to do this again. When I flex my arm, so look, this is my arm muscle. When I flex, it actually becomes shorter and thicker, and then I relax. So I contract and relax, contract and relax. Okay, it's a little different than elastic band, but that's okay. So we can change that to be longer will become shorter, because we're correcting these. These sentences are incorrect, and thinner will become thicker. Okay, so I'll write that down. When you flex your arm, comma, the muscle tissue becomes shorter and thicker. Okay, last one for this page, and then we'll flip to the other side. It says, our bodies have some muscles that we can move voluntarily and some that we move involuntarily. And that's without us thinking about it. So let's think of an example of each. So your arms, we can move voluntarily if your arms are working correctly. If someone like Melody in Out of My Mind, she can't move her arms voluntarily, but she does move them involuntarily sometimes. It's out of her control. Involuntary muscles in a typical body, the heart is one. You don't think about moving it, but you move it. All right, so your arm muscles are voluntary, your heart is involuntary. All right, let's flip to the other side. Why are bones hard and muscles soft? So for this one, we're going to read about what is different about bones and muscles. So it says, under a microscope, bone cells look very different from muscle cells. Bone cells are star-shaped and contain a nucleus and a thin ring of cytoplasm. Bone tissue is made up of layers of bone cells, surrounded by calcium and other minerals. These minerals are what make our bones hard. Bones give our bodies shape and allow us to stand upright. Hard bones and soft muscles work together to give us strength, form, and movement. Bones cannot move by themselves. They need muscles that contract and release to pull them into motion. But muscles can't contract and release without being attached to something hard and rigid like bones. In order for our bodies to function, we need both bones and muscles. So let's look. This is inside a bone. So it shows inside a bone, and this is what a bone cell looks like. So it's got calcium around it, right? It's got calcium. And bone's made up of layers of these bone cells, and they're surrounded by calcium and other minerals, okay, that we get from our diet, from a healthy diet. So, and that's why people are always telling you to eat your vegetables, because vegetables and other calcium-rich foods are very good for your bones. Okay, so let's describe 2 ways that bone cells and muscle cells are alike and 2 ways they're different. So if we look, okay, well, they're alike. Both have cytoplasm and perform special functions, right? So both have cytoplasm. So I'm going to really have to look at the word to spell properly. cytoplasm. And so both have cytoplasm and perform special functions and do special things. Let's say do specific things. You might have different words you want to use for this. Different ways to say this. And how they're different. So bone cells are shaped kind of like stars and surrounded by calcium, whereas muscle cells, they're long and thin and they have more than one nucleus. So bones are shaped like stars, or you could say they're star-shaped, and surrounded by calcium. Let's just say surrounded by minerals. Okay, move my paper. And muscles. Well, muscles are long and have more than one nucleus. All right, B, why do you think that nutrition experts recommend that young people eat foods high in calcium? So think about it. Why do you think that when you're young and your bones are growing, you need to eat lots of calcium? Right. You need to build your bones. So maybe as your bones grow, Calcium is needed. You could say it's necessary or it's needed to make them stronger. All right, and that's the end of our ELA/science for today. I will post a couple of videos about cells that are pretty cool. So just a little bit of background about the parts of a cell. I will post some science videos to the science team channel. So check those out. There'll just be some optional YouTube videos, not ones I've made, but optional YouTube links to check out some cool stuff about bone, muscles, and bone cells and muscle cells. All right, so I'm going to leave it there. Have a fantastic rest of your day, and I will see you next week for more ELA/science.